On Saturday evening, 3 women did their shopping. They bought spices. A dear friend had died the day before, and they wanted to show their respects. They got up early the next day. It was Sunday, the first day of the week. They knew where they were going, to the tomb of their dead friend. They knew what they would do there: anoint his body with spices. They were well organized and well prepared. Except that, on the way, a thought struck them. What about the large stone that blocked the entrance? Nevertheless, they continued. On reaching the tomb, they saw that the stone had been rolled away. That was unexpected, but it wasn't a particular cause for alarm. In fact, it was rather convenient. It solved a problem for them. And so they went in. Inside, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe, sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. Were they alarmed just because they hadn't expected to find another person there? After all, it was still very early. Did they feel uncomfortable being alone with a man they didn't know? Was there something about him that was alarming? Matthew tells us that the young man was, in fact, an angel. Perhaps the women detected that there was something special, different about the young man. I'd imagine that an encounter with an angel, a supernatural being, particularly in a setting like a graveyard, might well be alarming. Remember the reaction of the shepherds when an angel appeared to them in the fields near Bethlehem. They were terrified. So much so that the angel had to tell them, "Do not be afraid." This angel tells the women, "Do not be alarmed." The angel continues, "You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who was crucified. If I were one of the women, I might be thinking, tell me something I don't know. Yes, we're here for Jesus' body, and we've got our spices ready. And thank you for reminding us that he was crucified, something of which we're all too painfully aware." At least the angel confirmed they were in the right tomb. But there was a significance in the words the angel uses. He accurately describes the state in which the women had come. They came for the body of a man, their friend, Jesus the Nazarene. That was what they were expecting to find, not unreasonably, as they'd witnessed him being crucified. They knew he had died. They knew his body had been placed in this tomb. So where was it? Then the young man says 7 words that turn their world upside down. He has risen. He is not here. Their heads would have been spinning. What did he say? Did you hear what I did? What does he mean? Perhaps he perceives their confusion, and so he continues in as practical and clear a way as he can. See the place where they laid him. Presumably, they do as he says, and they see nothing. Certainly not a body. I was genuinely shocked to read last week about the Reverend Rector Vosper, a United Church minister in Toronto. Perhaps I was more shocked at the things I read about the United Church. I learnt about something called the New Curriculum, a provocative educational text produced by the United Church that emphasized the importance of moral teachings over doctrinal beliefs and challenged Christians to question whether parts of the Bible were historically true. The newspaper article stated, there has been a slow but growing movement in United Church towards downplaying Jesus and the Bible and moving toward a more metaphorical interpretation of religious symbols and a greater emphasis on humanist, environmental, and social justice causes. Vosper was quoted as saying, the teaching in theological colleges doesn't lead prospective ministers toward a literal interpretation of the ordination questions. Very often, when people come out of the process of discovery, they no longer hold those as literal concepts. Professor Kevin Flatt, who has written a book about the United Church, said, my sense is there are a lot of ministers who don't really believe in anything resembling traditional Christianity. And Vosper's punchline was, clergy who don't believe are a dime a dozen. This offends me, because it makes me wonder whether people reading the article might think of me in this way, a sort of guilt by association. Whatever the shortcomings of the theological college I attended as part of my preparation for ordination, I was never encouraged to think that the Bible wasn't true. When I answered the questions put to me at ordination, I didn't have my fingers crossed behind my back. But actually, the greater offense is towards those women at the tomb. Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of James, and Salome. What are those like Vosper saying about them? Were the women deluded, believing what they wanted to be the case in spite of the evidence? But their account makes it clear that they fully expected to find a body. The absence of a corpse scuppered their plans. They'd even shelled out good money on spices to no effect. Or are we to believe they were lying? I say what I say in defense of the honor and reputation of the women who were actually there. I put my money on the witness of their first-hand experience ahead of anyone else. For me, it has the ring of truth. And this is the stance of the Anglican Church. Article 4 of the 39 Articles of Religion states, Christ did truly rise again from death, and took again his body, with flesh and bones, and all things appertaining to the perfection of man's nature. The chief priests and teachers of the law had said, let this Christ, this King of Israel, come down from the cross, that we may believe. The centurion, who heard Jesus cry and saw how he died, said, surely this man was the Son of God. The centurion saw and believed. His witness, and that of Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome, is good enough for me. I too believe. A close friend dies. You attend the burial. 3 days later, you go to pay your respects at the grave, taking some flowers with you. On arrival, you find the grave open, but you've seen the digger fill it in 3 days before. You look into the grave. The coffin's there, but with the lid off, and it's empty apart from the shroud. There's no body to be seen. How would you feel? I think my emotions would be bewilderment mixed with anger. Who has done this? The women at the tomb were at an advantage in 2 respects compared with the scenario I've just depicted. The young man was present to provide an explanation, albeit a challenging one, but still left them trembling and bewildered. But it would have begun to chime in with things that Jesus had said. He must be killed and after 3 days rise again. Mark 8:31. They will kill him, and after 3 days he will rise. Mark 9:31. The women still fled from the tomb. The angel had told them not to be alarmed, but now they were afraid. Left speechless, saying nothing to anyone for the time being. It had all been too much to take in. They'd set out that morning thinking they knew what was what, but everything had been turned upside down. Don't you think you'd have been like them? But it was so much more so for them. They'd been there with Jesus all along. They'd heard the things he'd said. And now, against their expectations, it was coming to pass before their eyes. The truth was beginning to impinge on their stunned minds. Yes, they were afraid. The hymn, "Let All Mortal Flesh Keep Silence," speaking of the incarnation, has the line, "And with fear and trembling stand." The women were experiencing the holy, awesome fear that grips people when they see God in action. The terrible realization of the significance of the crucifixion. Not just the death of a man, but of God's own Son, and by a people of whom they were a part. Even as we rejoice in Jesus' resurrection, we should also have that on our minds. The Titanic struck the iceberg on Sunday the 14th of April 1912, a week after Easter Day. Frank Holden was a 29-year-old stoker who'd been out drinking the night before the ship was due to sail and failed to report for duty. Someone who'd been looking for work at a dockside was recruited in his place. After the sinking, 2 boards were placed outside the White Star Line's Liverpool office, known to be lost and known to be saved. In error, Frank Holden was listed amongst the lost. 3 days later, he arrived home, as if returning from the dead. He was often to recount that someone died in my place. The significance of Jesus' death is that he died in our place, in place of you and me, for my sin and for your sin. His bodily resurrection is the pattern for what will happen to us. All will rise from death, as he did at the general resurrection of the dead at Jesus' second coming. Whether we are counted amongst those lost or those saved depends on our belief in Jesus. Peter is the primary source for Mark's gospel account. He'd been brutally honest about his shortcomings, how he denied Jesus and broke down and wept, having done so. But now he makes sure that Mark records the young man's words in full. Tell his disciples and Peter, Jesus is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you. How precious those words, and Peter, must have been to him, marking a reassurance of forgiveness. They are an assurance to us that God's love, shown forth in Jesus, is such that our standing before him is not on the basis of what we have done or failed to do. No one need write themselves off as not good enough. We all stand before God as sinners in need of his forgiveness. And that forgiveness is freely offered on the basis of our belief in Jesus, his death and resurrection.